Climate change is causing the water level of the Great Salt Lake to go down, exposing soil that holds literally centuries of toxins. And scientists warn that when the mud turns to dust, it will add to the air pollution that could be dangerous, in fact, for millions of people. CNN's Bill Weir now explains.
This is what is left of the Great Salt Lake. It hit record lows in recent months, exposing around 800 square miles of lake bed. But unchecked water use and climate change aren't just threatening the birds and sailboaters. And here the Western megadrought threatens a lot more than just snow sports, agriculture, and industry. Because this lake bed holds centuries of toxic runoff, mercury, selenium, arsenic, some of it natural, some of it man-made mining waste. But if it turns to dust and adds to some of the worst air pollution in the country, this is a threat to the lungs of over 2.5 million people.
We've done this experiment in history before. We know about dust storms, we know about particulate pollution, we know about heavy metals and how they're bad for humans. This is an ecological disaster that will become a human health disaster.
Bonnie Baxter is among the scientists who recently warned that the Great Salt Lake, as we know it, could be gone in 5 years, shriveled into fingers of lifeless water before becoming the Great Toxic Dust Bowl.
You can kind of see a person's
5 years. Still, to this day, people are not taking global warming serious because it's like the frog warming up in the water gradually. And this has come upon to us to the point that now it's going to take God to save our planet, and it's going to take all of mankind to turn in the right direction. And if we don't, it will be apocalyptic towards what we're going to witness and what we're going to see. Whenever I was out there in Utah, in the area where the Mormons are, you could literally identify the smell of sulfur, I'm going to say within 25 to 50 miles before you ever got to the city of Salt Lake, depending upon which way the wind was blowing. And it had a burning sensation in my eyes at the time. Kind of smelled like rotten eggs. But as I was out there, this would have been in 2008. As I was out there, I realized that this was a very, very dangerous body of water that was just sitting there, basically just waiting for something horrible to happen. And sure enough, now it's happening, pertaining to the earth warming up and evaporating the moisture content off and out of the land masses. You know, whenever you get to looking over in Chile towards how in South America, how dry and that it's been out there. Mexico has received a little bit of rain this past winter. And I'm not saying that winter's over, but I'm just saying that they've received a little bit of rain, but not near enough rain to justify confiscating the differences of their fresh water drinking supply that are in dire need even to this day, even though it rained what it has rained this past fall or this past winter. We have seen some significant rains and snows up in the Rocky Mountains and up on the hills coming into Lavada and up into the going up into the Origin Range, but a lot of that water that It was a fast flowing water. And if the truth be known, a great deal of it right there in California, or I'm going to say west of the mountain range out there, a great deal of that water wound up in the oceans. Because whenever it rains hard like that, it's not a good sound soaking rain. Now, Lake Mead, pertaining to the Colorado River, will receive what snowfall and waterfall that come basically east of the peaks in the high mountains that will help Lake Mead, help the Colorado River. But what people don't understand is that it took years for these occurrences to take place, and we're only really just now putting the brakes on things towards identifying what's actually going on. And to think that you're going to reverse this overnight, you're only dreaming in an hallucination. Because that in which what has taken years to develop in damaging our planet is going to take years and a great deal of prayer pertaining to the Holy Eternal Father towards sparing our planet and healing our nations. And whenever I say heal our nations, I'm just not talking about the violence, the drug use, the crime. I'm just not talking about all the above, but I'm talking about the planet in general. The planet in general is in trouble. It is sick. And as you pay close attention to what's going on worldwide, I just seen where New Zealand was fixing to be hit by a major, major storm, possibly 150, 160 mile an hour winds. They'd already received some flooding a couple weeks ago. Now this is just going to add that much more insult to misery. And you may be saying, well, what are you trying to say? I'm trying to say what I've been trying to say all along. What mankind has done, they have taken the normalcy out of our planet pertaining to the ecosystem, and now we're seeing effects all over the planet in some scarring, marring way that it's just absolutely a phenomenon in seeing all these occurrences happening at the same time, just like the river Euphrates drying up. Well, it's predicted in the Bible that the river Euphrates will dry up. But you have to ask yourself the question, well, if whatever's going to happen on the planet is going to cause the river Euphrates to dry up, which I believe is probably the fifth largest body of water on the planet, and that's saying something. If that's going to dry up, whatever else is causing the river Euphrates to dry up, don't you think that it's going to cause the rest of the water systems and the rivers and the canals and the lakes and the ponds and the watersheds and the tributaries, the rivers, don't you think it's going to dry up all the above? Sure it is. Scientists is now starting to realize what's happening here. We have thought all along that it was the ozone pertaining to the gases going up into the atmosphere that was causing our problems. They started out with cows basically giving out large amounts of gas, thinking that it was that. Then they went to hairspray. Then they changed from hairspray to a refrigerating coolant called R134 from R12. And there's no doubt all those things needed to be observed and looked at, just like the pellets in the catalytic converters towards slowing down the smog, the poisonous gas that goes up into the atmosphere. All those things needed to be done. All the above. But while we was focusing up above our heads because we noticed that the weather was acting irregular, we took our eye off the ball towards what we was actually doing to the planet from within. From within. I don't want to see these things occur. And I still say that because certain things didn't occur that should have occurred 30 plus years ago has put us in this very, very uncomfortable Aquarius state that we're in right now. I mean, whenever you see, like in 2007, whenever the Appalachian Mountains got so dry that they had an outbreak of all them fires, whenever you see fires like out in Denver, Colorado, over towards Boulder, whenever you see floodings, whenever you see the lake down in Atlanta in 2007, as well as Florida, dry almost completely up, you know something is going on big. It's huge. And this isn't something that you are accustomed towards here in America, towards thinking that if we just bury it in the sand, stick it under the carpet, out of sight, out of mind, eventually it may heal itself or go away. It's not going to go away. And it's not going to heal itself. That's just like the national deficit. The national deficit is not going to go away. I just got through picking up on reports this weekend by looking at various things in regards towards bankruptcies. I couldn't believe that the bankruptcy courts extended their services 5 times greater last year than what they did the year before. And to be quite honest with you, I'm going to go as far as to say that this year they're going to take another big hit in expanding their bankruptcy policies. Because why? Because all this has caught up with the American people all at the same time. And COVID has basically, energized these problems of them surfacing to the surface that much more quicker. It has accelerated things. And now we really are starting to look at things. And I truly believe that that was one analogy that a lot of our lawmakers and our politicians don't look at pertaining to the January 6th deal. Whenever you have a country that has been running on, let's say, cruise. You had it on cruise. While everybody thought that everything was running the way that it was supposed to have been running, and then all of a sudden, everybody wakes up at the same time. It's as if the Super Bowl that we just watched over in Arizona, pertaining to the Chiefs and Philadelphia, I think the Chiefs won. Matter of fact, I know they did. I watched it. But to have all the people in the stands, which I think is somewhere around, I don't know exactly how big their stadium is. It's got to probably be as big as Nashville or bigger. 70, 80, 90, maybe 100,000. I don't know, maybe more. But whenever you was to take everybody in the stands and all of a sudden rush, and I mean rush all at once, towards getting down on the ball field where the team is playing, what's going to happen? You're going to have total chaos. You're going to have total chaos, and it's going to be anarchy, because nothing is going to be handled in a proper, orderly form. And that's basically what we're seeing right now, towards a bunch of people that has suddenly woken up and realized, my God, this government, it's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, yeah, it was going to hell in a handbasket 5, 7, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Nobody was paying attention to it, though. And it was so stirring that I truly believe that that was one of the main motivation purposes towards a group of people going up to Washington, D.C., January the 6th. It wasn't to cause an erection, per se, or an uprising, per se. It was to stop a catastrophe that now hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people can suddenly start to see. And these are the things that I've been talking about now for a long, long time. A long, long time. And I can prove it. I've got documentation to prove pertaining to whenever I first put out the remarks about the Mississippi River going to start to go dry. I didn't say the Mississippi would go dry. I said the Mississippi River would start to go dry, indicating that the water flow in the river was not going to be normal, and that we was going to see the Mississippi River start to drop towards the volume of water that goes through it every year on levels unimaginable. And of course, this past last year, the Mississippi River basically broke all-time records towards it getting so low that it almost shut down the barge traffic completely. Completely. It was down to a crawling, snailing crawl. We know that Lake Mead has dwindled in the past 40 years, give or take about 190 feet in comparison to where it should be. That's almost 20 stories. 20 stories of water level that is no longer there. And it actually had become so low last year that various people was thinking that if we don't get a lot of snowfall this year, this winter, or some sort of large amounts of rain off, that it was possible that they was going to have to stop the turbines on the Hoover Dam, because the Hoover Dam has to have a certain amount of water to not only move the turbines, but it's got to have a certain amount of water to keep those turbines cool. And if the water is not there, or the water gets so hot that it can no longer function the way that it's supposed to, then basically they'll have no other choice but to shut that stuff down. They'll have no other choice. There is water systems all over this planet that now scientists are starting to pay close attention to. And lakes, watersheds, tributaries that a great deal of people are now beginning to open their eyes towards and understanding, oh my God, this is really, really happening. Oh yeah. And these are the things that people like China and other major developing areas have overlooked and wanted to put on the back burner, or just completely, totally deny that these occurrences was happening to begin with. Well, what you're seeing right now of this particular body of water, and like I said, it smelt like sulfur whenever I was out there, and I didn't stay out there but maybe about a half a day. I talked to 4 or 5 different people. I looked at this, I looked at that. I wish that I would have stayed out in that area 2 or 3 days and at least visited and looked at some things that today are considered historical. I wish that I'd stayed out there now a bit more time, but I didn't, because I didn't know what was going to happen in my life, and I was being punished because of a group of people that was trying to make me out to be basically a monster that didn't just begin in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in 2009 in my life, but actually began right here in Weakley County in Martin, Tennessee in 2005. Then in 2007, I had another event that happened in Kentucky, and then in 2009 is whenever the event happened out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So between all the above and all the chit-chat and all the misinformation, all the gossip, it basically put me in a red alert to the degree that I couldn't go nowhere without it affecting my life, even into my professional life pertaining to me being an auto body technician. Whenever I drove by this body of water in 2012, I was guaranteed a job in Basalt, Colorado, which is about 15 miles north of Aspen, Colorado, where a great deal of wealthy and rich people live. But I was guaranteed a job as long as I didn't have drugs in my system and I didn't have no felonies. And I quit a job in eastern Tennessee. I drove all the way out there. And then after I drove out there and I went through the orientation, because of the gossip that was online about me, it wasn't nothing official. It was just chit chat. But to give you some sort of an idea that you cannot outrun the computer is basically whenever all that backfired in my lap after me dropping off my tools at this body shop. I done already got an extended stay for a month, and I was fixing to go to work towards being that in which what I had adapted to or towards. And all of a sudden, I dropped the tools off on Thursday. Told them because it was, an ending part of the week that I'd rather start on a Monday. Gave me some time to look around, experience some things, look around up in the hills, because I was, give or take, I think around 15,000 feet, I think, above sea level in that area. Maybe not quite that high, maybe 12, I don't know. But I was to go to work that following Monday because I had went through the orientation. I had passed on my skills, and I had passed pertaining to the drug analogy. But all of a sudden, I get a telephone call telling me that I needed to come and talk to this guy on a Sunday afternoon, of him explaining to me that because all that stuff was on the internet, that it was going to affect his business, and the deal was off. And I needed to come up there and get my tools, out of his facility, because he didn't want me on his premises. So, whenever I drove through this particular area, coming from the high country, which was probably about a 10, maybe a 12-hour drive, maybe a little longer, I don't know. But I had all that going on in my mind pertaining to how that I was being persecuted by a group of people that wanted to transfigurate my work towards it being evil rather than it being good. And I had no idea that in 2012 that it was going to be that devastating until I got out to Colorado. And then the same thing happened to me in California. And then the same thing happened to me in Phoenix, Arizona, at a church probably less than 10 miles away where they just got through playing the Super Bowl, 10 or 15 miles away where they played Super Bowl tonight in Phoenix, Arizona, off of Camelback Road. And then I went back to Oklahoma and started fighting my case and finally won the case. But as soon as I won the case, here the feds come and pick me up again over 2 non-threatening telephone calls and drag me back to Kentucky towards persecuting me that much more. So it was endless. Being torn, being misrepresented, being hunted, being victimized, being basically treated as if I was Timothy McVeigh or Nichols or even bin Laden himself. It was endless towards how that these communications with so many people that had these computers and all this nonsense and all the fake news was affecting my life. It was affecting my life. And of course, after I stayed almost a year in jail well, it was supposed to have been Trigg County, but Trigg County supposedly don't have a jail, if you can believe that. Even though they've had all that industrial in there a long time ago, towards all the big money. But I stayed in Hopkinsville Christian County Jail for almost a year over 2 nonsense telephone calls that these people was trying everything in the world to ruin my life. And they had no idea that while they was trying to ruin my life, they was basically trying to ruin their own. And whenever I throw stones at some people right here locally, around here in this neighborhood, I'm not just throwing stones at various people locally here in Northwest Tennessee. My stone throwing goes all the way out to California, Phoenix, Arizona, Denver, Colorado. My stone throwing goes all the way up to Louisville, Kentucky, and Florence, Kentucky, Big Bone, Kentucky. My stone throwing goes as far to the east almost as it does to the west, and different places down south that was affecting my life pertaining to the garbage that was placed on the internet. So whenever I tell people what type of system that they have created, how unjust and unfair that the American system has become, I hope now that they can maybe get some sort of an ideal about people that has committed an actual crime to the degree that they had to go and pay their penalty to society. By and large, the way that I've always understood the laws, that the system cannot persecute you twice for the same crime. Well, that's exactly what the computer and the internet and all this high-tech technology on all these phones is doing. It's causing people to not just pay their dues to society of the first time that they get punished, but now whenever you get out and you try to get a job or you try to go live somewhere, now all that stuff comes up to the degree that now society is punishing you again because you made a boo-boo. Because you made a mistake, regardless whether it's intentional mistake or an unintentional mistake, you made a mistake, but you paid your debt to society. And you're not supposed to be punished twice for the same crime. And whenever all that was going on in my life, the way that it was going on, I knew then that the system wasn't just rigged like Donald Trump talked about, but the system was completely broken. I mean, completely broken. Whenever you have a system that is that evil and that cruel to the degree that people cannot make them in and try to get back on their feet and start all over again, towards giving them a second or a third or possibly a fourth or fifth chance. And now we're starting to see the repercussions of some of the things that I tried to clarify going all the way back into the early 90s, whenever the Windmill Ministries first started, in regards towards these major events, including a bloody road ahead, as well as major electrical disturbances to come. All these bigwigs, all these money people, all these highfalutin people that thought that they was going to do something like this and get away with it, those are the people that the fault falls upon their feet, because they obviously thought that this was some sort of game or some sort of joke. Well, whenever you look at the earthquake that recently hit over in Turkey and Syria, I guess now about a week ago, and they've done drug out, I guess, about 25,000 people. Unbelievable. And that's just the people that's dead. That ain't the people that got injured. Broken arms, broken legs, cut off hands, cut off legs, cut off this, cut off that. I mean, there's going to be probably a few thousand people out of that other group that is considered injured that ain't going to make it. They don't have the type of means over there like we do here, and you'll have a lot of people that will basically die of infection. They'll die because their bodies got so weak that they're no longer going to be able to fight off various agencies that have come up against their body. And you can probably, it was first told that it was going to be a conservative number of 20,000. I want to say the conservative number now that they're fixing to go off into within the next 45 days to 6 months will probably exceed over 30,000 people. And that's just the people that's dead. It affected, give or take, around 3 to 4 million people immediately whenever that earthquake hit, 8.7 earthquake hit. Why did that earthquake hit? Just like Christ tried to put out advisories towards telling people that in the last days that there would be earthquakes in diverse places in the King James Version Bible. And whenever you're constantly draining oil out of the ground and you're creating these big vacuum holes, and then whenever the ground does shift, pertaining to the platelets, it don't just shift a little, it shifts abnormally, just like the occurrences coming out of the sky, pertaining to it either being extremely hot or extremely wet or extremely this or extremely that. I've used this analogy before, and I think it's a good analogy, that it's as if Mother Nature is throwing a tantrum just like an infant getting in the floor, a young baby, a child, and screaming and hollering and taking his legs and his hands and throwing them against the floor and screaming as loud as he can toward trying to get his way. That's basically what we're seeing out of Mother Nature. And this is some more proof of it that I'm documenting there at Salt Lake City, that the lake was just humongous in the size. I don't know how many square miles that the lake is, but it's got to be probably one of the biggest lakes. I'm going to say probably a 14,000 square foot lake, maybe a 16,000 square foot lake, and I may be way off. I may be way off the charts. It may be twice that. I don't know, but it's a humongous body of water, and to see something like this that's happening, as well as all the other stuff that I just got through telling you about, it's frightening. It's terrorizing, actually, to think that we have sat back idly by in allowing for this to come up onto us the way that it has. And I still blame Lucifer, the devil, Satan, in the flesh, that was so powerful and so devious that he basically deceived the world in putting us where we are right now in regards towards the major oil petroleum tycoons out there that obviously thought that this was a hoax too. And now we're realizing, instead of it being a hoax, we're starting to realize that this thing has actually shifted, and now we're seeing repercussions out of the earth that line directly up with the Bible. Apocalyptic.
You can kind of see a person standing out there, like the water would have been above their head just a few years ago.
This is what is known as a terminal lake, with no rivers to take minerals to the sea. So they build up over time, just like Owens Lake in California, after developers notoriously drained it a century ago to build Los Angeles. It both inspired the movie Chinatown and forced Californians to spend in the billions to control the toxic dust that remains a threat 100 years later.
This lake is 12 to 15 times bigger than Owens Lake. It's right next to a metropolitan center, which that lake was not. So there are people who will breathe this dust immediately. And we're really, really concerned about that happening here. So we have done that experiment.
Plus, keep in mind that they're on the other side of the Mississippi River, west of the Mississippi River. And that's basically where Oklahoma got its Dust Bowl back in the 20s and the 30s, that dried up so badly, where it was just unbelievable. I mean, I've seen pictures where the sand and the dust actually covered people's houses. Of course, their houses back then was, shotgun shanty, one room houses or whatever. But still, I mean, to see sand cover over cars and houses was unbelievable. And to think that their crops wasn't growing and people was suffering immensely had to have been a exiting out of Oklahoma at that time that probably went beyond imaginations. Now this is on the other side of the Rocky Mountain Plain, give or take probably about 1,200 miles from Oklahoma. But this is also at the foot hills, are the beginning areas of basically Yellowstone National Park. We know for a fact that we've seen extremely more movement out of Yellowstone pertaining to the geysers and pertaining to bodies of water that's basically just drying up. So you can't tell me that what we're doing to this planet is not affecting this planet, and it's affecting the planet from the inside out and not necessarily the outside in. Yeah, our human consumption and all the gizmos and gadgets and so many people on the planet, that's had a bearing on everything. But the real bearing is the fact of how that they have drained precious resources out of the ground that's now causing stuff to go haywire. And this is a repercussion of it. Proof is in the pudding.
It was human choices that led to that catastrophic event, right? We're looking at the Great Salt Lake in a position right now to where we can avoid that catastrophe, where we don't have to spend those billions of dollars in remediation in the future if we make choices today.
Brian,
Stop. That's wishful thinking to avoid a catastrophe. There's going to be catastrophes. The Bible teaches that. And it also says to pray that you're worthy to escape these things that are going to be fallen here upon to the earth, indicating that they will be fallen upon to the earth, pertaining to the wrath of the devil, Satan, coming down in great wrath. So whenever these people make these remarks like that that we can escape these things, you don't understand. We're in a position right now that nothing is going to be unescapable pertaining to the damages that we have caused to Mother Nature. And unless we're willing to put an urgency on it at warp speed, I don't know that we could slow it down, much less even stop it. And I know that we're not going to be able to do nothing with it if we don't have God on our side towards helping us to be able to do it. Because this is on a trajectory right now of doom and gloom to the planet. Doom and gloom.
Brian Steed and John Lynn are from rival Utah universities, one with a background in state government, the other an atmospheric scientist.
The thing is, it's bipartisan, right? Therefore, we all want clean air.
Together, they're part of the newly formed Great Salt Lake Strike Team, out to convince everyone that every drop counts.
For a long time, I don't think that people were sufficiently talking for the lake. Now I think that we have a lot of people interested, the governor of the state, the legislature, who's all very interested in coming up with different scenarios and different solutions so that we don't end up with that catastrophic outcome.
It seems like the path of least resistance is for the state to pay farmers for their water rights. Is that going to happen?
I don't know, it remains to be seen. I think there's a lot of things that we could do that go to that extreme.
Among the signs of change, when U.S. Magnesium wanted to extend canals into the lake, the state said no. And last year, the legislature finally began revising water laws written in the days of the Wild West.
Sometimes I feel like we take a step forward and sometimes we take a step back, but in general, all those pieces of water legislation that passed in 2022 were bipartisan and unanimous. Like, where does that happen anymore?
Fingers crossed it keeps happening, because the only thing that can keep the Salt Lake great is lots of snow and even more cooperation.
That was our CNN chief climate correspondent, Bill Weir, and we thank him for that report. And I want to thank you for spending some time with me. I'm Paula. You can stay with us. World Sport with Patrick Snell is up next, and you want to stick around. He's got all the highlights from that epic Super Bowl.
I'm going to end it right there and say thank you for your time. God bless you, and God bless America, God bless our troops, and good luck to all of us as we're heading into this new pioneering and trying to save ourselves as well as save our great planet. God bless and shalom.